exactly 100 invitations sent out to this meeting.
Okay.
Some of the last ads, Joy reminded me that the Forest Service wasn't on this list, so I did reach out to Jason Nedlow at the London District and was given a contact for the Winchester District. I believe, Joy, is your district. And he did say he was not able to make the meeting tonight, but Jason Nedlow indicated that he would. And I think there's probably one more district I need to get a hold of in Clay County, maybe. So
Okay.
I think it'll involve 3 different ranger districts.
All right. That's right. That's great. Yeah, that's a very important part of the team to have the Forest District involved here.
Yeah, I know in our county, I'm pretty sure that the Warriors Path is part of one of the trail systems in the Forest Service. So that would be
Okay.
a great hiking, biking trail for people that want to walk or bike the Warriors Path.
Absolutely. And there will be overlaps with other trail systems along this corridor as well. And I would envision that long term we'll have the ability to market multiple opportunities for hiking in various sections of the National Forest, and as well as some other additional public places along the corridor of the Trails Path, Warriors Path Trail. And we would envision that this will be a trail corridor that involves bicycles as well as motorized vehicles and hiking. And there may be sections that would be compatible with equestrian, but that's something that remains to be seen whether that will work or not. But primarily we're looking at motorized route, a bicycle route, and hiking routes follow this corridor.
The area that I'm talking about in the Forest Service is around the Turkeyfoot area, and there's a lot of equestrian traffic in that area. So
Okay, great.
That will bring some equestrian activity to the whole trail.
That's great. It's great to hear that. Well, we are now at 5:30, and in the interest of your time and moving forward, I'd like to start this meeting off. I'm going to share my screen. I have a little PowerPoint that will pick up some of the same items that we discussed at our last meeting in early December. And
Buzz,
yes, go ahead.
before we get started,
Absolutely.
we just want to remind everybody that we are recording this, and I'll make the recording available to the planners of the meeting. So if you don't want to be recorded, too bad.
Great. Thank you, David. I appreciate it. And again, thank you, David, for hosting the Zoom meeting. It really helps us in these times to be able to bring a lot of people together to help focus on this common interest of the Warriors Path project. And tonight, my intent is, again, to kind of go do an overview of what brought us to this point, why the National Park Service is here again, and what the specific purpose of this meeting is, be able to review from our last meeting where your interest is in the poll results, and identify task teams to move the vision forward, and then get into some general discussion. We had some great recommendations and thoughts in the last month's discussion, and I hope we will continue with this evening's discussion. Well, overall, again, I'm Russell Clark. I'm with the National Park Service, Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Systems Program. And with me this evening are 2 other co-workers of mine, Helen Sievers and Michael Schilling. And they are assisting with this project as well, providing much needed backup, because I'm not a very good multitasker. I can do one thing at a time very well, 2 things hardly, and 3 things never. So I am not a good multitasker, and I really rely on technology of Helen and Michael to assist with this project. Well, why is the National Park Service here and hosting this particular event? It's primarily because our program, the Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Systems Program, is part of a partnerships division of the Park Service. and we offer free technical planning assistance through an application process to municipalities and nonprofit organizations. This program's been in existence for over 30 years, and we've been helping to bring America's best ideas to communities all across the country. We have a network of expertise and experience from around the nation. There are field office representatives for every state. Some states have more than one. And the program provides assistance in all areas of our country dealing with rural, suburban, and urban communities. Let me pull up my slide here to an active situation. Computer does get slow sometimes. I'm trying to move from one section to another.
While Russ is doing that, I'll just speak up and ask that anyone who is not on mute, please do so, just so that we can limit background noise while Russ is making a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Yes, and as we, very important to utilize the chat box at this point to identify who you are, which organization you represent, and your email address. As Judy indicated before we actually started the meeting, that at this point our email list is 100 different contacts along this corridor. I suspect that list is going to continue to grow, and so it's very important that each time we do a meeting that we identify by name, organization, and email so we can keep updating the list as we bring more folks into the fold with this vision. And this vision is really a vision of Judy Schmidt. She contacted me a while back to talk about assistance with a regional trail system called Warriors Path. And Judy, would you mind giving a quick overview of what that vision, how that came about to you? And again, it kind of helps identify why we're here and where we're trying to go.
Sure. A few years back, I was driving through Tennessee, and I saw there was a Warriors Path, and I knew that the Warriors Path went through Jackson County somewhere, but not exactly knowing where. But as I traveled the Warriors Path to Cherokee, I thought it was quite interesting. There were a lot of nice stops along the ways, like the Lincoln Museum, the cabin where the movie and book Christie was filmed, and just all kinds of old taverns and other places of significance. And I thought, why is the trail in Kentucky not marked? Because stopping at the Cumberland Gap on my way back home, I saw that it was a major path between the Cherokee and the Shawnee Nations. So that got my wheels a turning, thinking, what can we do to recognize the path in Kentucky? So I heard about this assistance from the National Park Service. So that's where I contacted Russell and said, how can we get your assistance to come up with the plan and develop this path and make it not only a state recognized path, but a national recognized path, especially since Tennessee's already connected. If we make this connection, maybe someday Ohio will connect all the way to Lake Erie and so forth. So that's my dream, is to develop the path, and similar to what Tennessee did, similar to what the Boone's Trace did, not only identifying the historical significant sites along the way, but places where you can hike, bike, horse ride, ATV ride, check your family tree. You know, a lot of places have nice historical information about the early families of their communities, and just being able to identify that and making it a true heritage trail. And that goes right along with what Hal Rogers did towards the end of last year, is trying to establish all his area as a national historic or heritage area. And this trail would be a perfect fit to what he's trying to do in the region.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Judy. It always helps to understand how a vision originates. And the good news is we're not starting from scratch. We've got other models to follow. And at this point, a lot of interest in pursuing this vision. In order to accomplish this type of regional trail planning effort, it would take a lot of different municipalities and historical groups and folks with special interest in this particular initiative to come together, work as a team, and pull all the pieces of resources and assets and put together an overall plan of how this vision can be implemented. Being able to get down to the point eventually of, perhaps having a national or state or both scenic byway designation is a potential end product. But in the meantime, getting to that, just coming together as local communities coming together along the corridor with historical groups, places of interest, understanding where people can spend a night, what additional recreational resources are available along this corridor, beginning to pull together, which is really truly a regional destination corridor for outdoor adventures. And this setting offers all those opportunities. So with our primary aspect of the purposes of this meeting and the past meeting was to really determine if there's support for the project. Well, I can pretty much say you're getting an A+ if you're sending out 100 invitations to a meeting. That's a lot of interest. And in order to complete this vision, it's going to come down to different teams coming together, focused on specific objectives in order to accomplish this overall vision. One person can't do all of it. 2 or 3 people cannot do all of it. This is the magnitude of several teams of people coming together in order to accomplish this vision. And so we're looking at creating task teams to move this vision forward. And one of the key aspects in moving this vision forward is going to be completing an application to our program, which is due on March 1st. At this point, I am able to help host meetings and help organize a little bit as a consultation, but my time is limited under the aspect of a consultation compared to a full-blown project. And so an application is required to receive project status. Once the application is submitted, it's reviewed with other applications in the Southeast region. And depending on how the application scores and the amount of time available for field staff, projects are selected based on meeting the criteria of the application and staff availability. Some projects do end up applying more than 1 year. Usually they are approved on a second year if they weren't approved on the first year because of limited staff time. So we encourage all folks that have an idea to seek out assistance, continue to pursue those efforts, and ultimately we hope that we'll be able to get to all the project requests that come forth in the region. I have had the opportunity to work with Dr. John Fox on Boone's Trace, and we spent approximately 2.5, almost 3 years working together on that project, leading up to a great master plan and several trail town initiatives along that corridor. And a bicycle route has been brought forth from the U.S. bike route aspects, and several different things took place as a result of many different teams coming together to realize that vision. And this project overlaps with a portion of the Boone Trace and the Wilderness Road project. So a lot of history involved, and we need to have our local historians to help understand the history of each and every community along this corridor. So what the results were of our last meeting in terms of where your areas of interest were, we were looking for folks to help with in a trail planning aspect for motor and bicycle and hiking. We were looking for folks to help with the inventory of local assets, which is kind of a cultural and historical component. Then we need to have some folks to help us with outreach, how to reach out to set a strategy up to reach out to the local communities, perhaps do some workshops or some public meetings along the way on the corridor to get additional input. And marketing and branding is a big part of that. And then there's also one of the end goals is certification as a potential state and national scenic byway. And as I've identified already, apply for assistance from our program, which is due March 1st. That is the shortest duration task team that we have at this point, is get that application submitted time-wise. So as we break down the task teams, it comes down to a lot of different pieces in each one of them. And at this point, the Trail Corridor Master Planning, we kind of have an idea where the corridor is as a big picture item, where the actual Warriors Path Trail is, may vary from what we know today to what the end product will be through additional investigation. And some of the communities along the way have some of this knowledge already in place. And so we want to capture what's out there, utilize it, and look at this from a big picture standpoint. Where are the motor routes that connect those cultural assets along the way that are close to the Warriors Path route, as we know it today? Where are the bicycle routes that can also be close to that in that same corridor, and where can the hiking trails be instituted representing the Warriors Path? With culture and history, there's several different segments of that. It's the Native American story, making sure that all the information related to that cultural data is brought forth, the stories are told, the places are identified, and the locations are important to be able to ultimately mark on a map which ones are publicly accessible, and some may be on private property and not publicly accessible. That all those differentiations will have to be evaluated and identified through this process. And what is the actual path itself? Where is that located compared to where we have roadways and potential hiking trails today? So those are two big task teams that we're looking for assistance on. The others, again, come back to marketing and branding. You know, how do we do the outreach to additional partners and communities? What's the media outreach look like? Is there going to be a logo developed for this project? Those are all things to be considered under marketing and branding. And each one of these task teams will most likely expand or contract based on what the group feels is most important. I'm just giving an identification of where we can start, and the groups themselves will really set their own vision out. With the scenic byway aspect, there's both a state and a national byway certification program. We'll have to identify whether it's being funded now or not. It may be something that there is no funding for at this point, but perhaps will be in the future, and we just plan accordingly so that we're ready when the programs may open up to be able to become certified on a national level. With the application due on March 1st, this is application found online, and we'll need 3 letters of commitment with this process. And those letters are important from the standpoint of project partners that will be able to commit to helping with this process. And one of those might be a regional planning agency that can help with GIS mapping. Another might be a series of organization that can help host some meetings, both on a virtual standpoint and or physical standpoint in the future. And basically those 3 letters of commitment are just identifying how some of the project partners are able to physically help move this vision forward. And we don't need to have letters of support from 25 or 30 different organizations. Or the application does provide an opportunity to list 10 or 15 if you want to, but we need 3 letters to go with the application that begin to identify what that particular partner is going to do as a commitment to help move this vision forward. In the past, our program has had 25, 30 letters of support, and when we get down to it, they're all letters saying it's a good idea, but they're not identifying what they're going to do to help move the project forward. So we have reconstituted our application process to say we only need 3 letters, but just identify from those partners what their commitment's going to be to help move this project forward. So those are the task groups. And I would like to ask again, if you would please use the chat box to identify where your interest lies. My intent here is I'm going to work with Judy on the application process over the next 30 days to try and get that part brought together. The other task teams can begin to, once we correlate and get some information who's interested in which one, we will coordinate those groups getting together through the emails, et cetera, to start thinking and brainstorming how they want to move forward. And once this project comes up to a full project, approved project, then our team can come in and help facilitate some of those task teams with some of the details to move forward with the specific task and planning or identifying assets and mapping and that type of thing. So at this point in time, we really need to know where your interest is so we can start to group the task team individuals. And we've received a few already, and we really thank you for that. I'm going to, obviously, there's Joy Brown has volunteered to be on several of the task teams, and I really appreciate that. We've had a couple of people identify specific intents, and that's fine too. If your interest is on just a little piece of this, that is great. We want you to participate where your interest is. And I'm not trying to reach out to give somebody another full-time job here. We're all volunteers on your part, and we recognize that. So we want to use your time efficiently, and we want you to have the area of interest that you're most concerned about be where you're helping this project move forward. Judy, do you have anything you'd like to add relative to the task teams and information so far that you have learned?
I'd just like to say that working with this application is going to be the critical first step. And there is a meeting next week concerning that application. So please identify tonight if you're willing to help with it, and we'll send you a link to that meeting that you can sit in virtually, and it'll go over some key points of the application. And then if the 3 letters are a critical part of this application, if there's 3 organizations tonight that are willing to commit to those letters, that would be great. I see that the Cumberland Valley ad said Bluegrass GSI mapping, so maybe a letter from them, and just anybody else that has something. If somebody here can host meetings, that would be great if they'd be willing to do that. But I think that's the first step, and then people are identifying the little niches that they're interested in, which is great. But we need each county to form a local group that really researches where the trail went in their community. And a lot of counties have done this, and I can just say that Jackson County may be lagging a little bit behind, because every time I try to research it, I find different paths, and when I try to follow up on the source, the paths were not made from somebody from the area that had hands on the ground and knows the local heritage, where the Indian petroglyphs are at, and different things that would be critical to establishing where the Warriors Path went in our community. And I know there's a few other counties in that situation as well, but some counties have theirs well mapped out. For example, from Cumberland Gap to Flat Lick, that section is done by virtue of the Boone's Trace, where the Warriors Path and the Boone Trace were the same path in that section. So we might start with the mapping of that particular section, and then as other counties find, that they've done their research and they know where the path is, and of course they have to coordinate that with the people on each side of them to see that they agree with that, because what I find in Jackson County is one of our neighbors knows exactly where their path went, but it doesn't correspond to other maps that I'm finding. So that's why we have to do a lot of research to figure that out.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Judy. I've used the chat box, identify which task teams you are interested in helping with. That's really important to move this vision forward. It's my intent to help focus on getting the application done so that we can go through that approval process. I can't guarantee approval. That's beyond my control, but we will do the best job we can to make it a great application. And since it's been a consultation so far, that's one leg up over another project that we haven't been involved with. So just so you're aware that you've got one leg up on a project that's been unheard of by our program so far, and we'll take it to the best shot we can to get this project approved. But we're always competing against the available time of the field staff to work on various projects. You know, it's not hard to sell free, and so there's a lot of demand out there, and the aspect that we have to prioritize at this point. At this point, I would just like to again thank you for your time and joining us and everything. And I want to move into kind of the next segment of the meeting here that is kind of a general discussion, because we've had some great discussions so far, and I don't want to lose that opportunity. Great ideas come forth when we start kind of brainstorming, looking at this big picture. And I did identify we need a Zoom meeting host for the next meeting. David Wicks originally indicated he'd do the first couple of meetings, and tonight he indicated he'll stick around for a little while, but I'd really like to have someone in the group that we're forming here to take on the responsibility of hosting the Zoom meetings for us, because David is on another large project that we're working on, the Ohio River Recreation Trail, and that has committed a lot of time on his part. And so we're thankful that he's able to reach out and help us with this. And this project overlapped with this project up in Portsmouth, Ohio. So the two projects intersect at that location, and that's a great thing in the world of regional trail planning. At this point, I would really I'll exit out of the presentation so that we can stop sharing here and we can get back to a round robin discussion if you'd like. Please let me know if you want to speak up, unmute yourself, and let's hear your comments. What are your thoughts? What is it going to take to move this forward?
This is Lisa Botner, Owsley County Tourism Director. I would like to touch on something that Judy just spoke about with the struggles of the research of finding out exactly where this path is and the trails. I've actually been doing a lot of that over the past couple weeks. I'm really struggling to find the connection into Owsley County altogether. Everything that I'm coming across seems to kind of bypass Owsley County, every single map. And I know that there's different branches of this Warriors Path, because I'm sure not every foot trampled the same path. I'm sure that there's branches of that. So Judy, if in your research, you're a neighbor of ours there. So, if you come across anything, if you could just maybe get in touch with me and we could work a little bit together on this research, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. And the reason why I'm pretty sure that it probably goes through your county is that your neighbor Clay County has a very precise map of where the Warriors Path went and different sites along the path. And it goes through a gap there on your county line into Island City. And then other reports I've read says it goes from Island City along the Sturgeon and somewhere into Jackson County is what the other reports read. And our historical marker says that the path was just east of Grayhawk. So the connection then between Grayhawk and Island City needs to be made.
That's great. I think that one of the key aspects that this project is going to be is a clearinghouse of information related to Warriors Path. And I think that as a result of that, we're going to have to come up with a strategy on how we share information, how information is one collected, how it's shared, and be able to be that clearinghouse, because this is a large undertaking involving a lot of different land masses and different jurisdictions along the corridor. Other thoughts?
Hey there, Russell. This is Robert Donnan, and
Yes, Robert?
so I'm just curious. Do we have involved in this process at any point yet representatives of the two tribal nations, the Shawnee and the Cherokee?
To my knowledge, we do not yet, but that's one of the primary aspects of intent, to reach out to them as soon as we get the ability to move forward with the big picture on this project. And that before we get too far down the road, we want to bring them to the table and get their input along this entire planning process.
Yeah, because for the master planning task group, it'd be wonderful to have their blessing and participation if we can work that out.
Absolutely, and it's my hope that that will be one of the tasks that the National Park Service can help with that, reaching out and bringing them to the table.
Awesome.
I'm not sure if Helen Dancer is on this meeting tonight, but Helen.
She was
has some-
earlier.
Helen
I'm
has-
here, Judy.
Yeah, would you answer that question for Robert?
Which part of that question?
Well, I believe that you have some Native American heritage, and I believe it's Cherokee. Is that correct?
I have Cherokee heritage. I belong to the Piqua tribe, and my husband knows more about the territory than I do. Our historian who lives in Ohio probably has as much information as anybody I know. She was born and raised in Tennessee and knows the Kentucky-Tennessee trails reasonably well. I have hesitated to ask her to give input into this because she just recently lost her husband due to COVID. So I have not made any contact with her yet, but she would be an asset if she is capable to make the trips now with that loss. She's my age, and she generally travels with somebody, so I'll be happy to reach out to her. I can talk with Frank and Judy. I don't know if you want to put him on the call or not, because sometimes it's hard to make him shut up when he gets to talking.
Okay.
I'm okay with him being on here. I just need an email address. And even if your contact down in Tennessee would just sit in on these meetings and provide us information would be great. And
Actually, Judy, she lives in Ohio and has most of her adult life. I will talk with her. She is not computer savvy, so I don't know if I could get her on a Zoom call or not, because she won't even do text messaging. But I would be able to get her to help us with the trails.
that would be great.
That's fantastic. And essentially, one of the things that I would envision moving forward is that these task groups will start to come together to just talk about the commonalities and focus on certain pieces of this without all of us having to be involved in every conversation. So then ultimately be able to report back to the group as a whole on what they are accomplishing. And that's the vision that we have on how this process is going to work. Other thoughts?
Russ,
Yes.
this is John Fox.
Hey, John?
Can you hear me okay, or?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, great. Just on the route that you all decide to do, I personally don't have time to do it, but I did take out a map and kind of look at it. Want to connect the old Indian fields up near Winchester, and then it'll go through McKee. Judy knows probably more about this than anybody, but is McKee, Manchester, and then down to Tyner, And then all the roads at that point, all the roads become like a spider web. They kind of go off in all different directions.
Right.
And my suggestion would, you want to connect the old Indian Fields to Flat Lick. That's your ultimate goal. And Flat Lick, there's the Daniel Boone Park. There's actually a street sign that says Warriors Path that comes off of that, and it follows Stinking Creek. And so the truth of the matter is it was a multiple trail, sort of like the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Vietnam, and you probably will not find a single route. So I would suggest just pick it, just what would be the most pleasant. You want it to be fun. You want it to be pleasant. Connect as many points of interest as you can, and just find a single trail that we can put signage out and drive.
Right.
And stick with it.
John,
Yes. Is that
I
Helen?
find it interesting that you mentioned that the path goes from Manchester to Tyner, because I live in Tyner right on 421, and I have been told that I live on the Warriors Path. I do not know how to verify that.
Well, you won't be able to, Helen. So, we can only do the best we can do. And when somebody finds other evidence that's more accurate, but I wouldn't really try to be extremely accurate anyway. You want this to be kind of a fun thing and pleasant, and so hit as many points of interest as you can and kind of let it go at that. But you live there, they say it's the Warriors Path. That's your story. I'd stick with it, and until somebody comes up with a better idea.
Great. Thank you, John.
This is John Grace. Could I?
Go right ahead.
contribute?
Go right ahead, John.
Hello? Okay. I first got involved with the Warriors Path, working on trails in Carter County. And I've kind of picked that up again more intently since our last Zoom meeting. And I found some somewhat detailed descriptions of the way the trail ran. And matter of fact, I've mapped them out and put them on the website that I just created a couple of weeks ago, warriorspath.org.
Okay.
And so I put some maps on there. So one of the things that I am kind of deducing is that different paths were used for different purposes. Like between Manchester and Irvine, the Goose Creek and Kentucky River were used.
I think we might have lost John.
Were on foot, then a more inland route. And I think that's where places like Tyner and McKee come into play, but those were more direct routes to the north. But if anyone gets a chance to take a look at the website, I'd certainly appreciate your feedback on what I've suggested.
Okay. Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate that. And I know I will be checking. I hope the rest of the team will as well. Appreciate your efforts there. Thank you.
Mr. Clark, I would just kind of like to echo what Dr. Fox said and also what Mr. Grace said. What we have to realize, in my opinion, this trail existed for 10,000 years.
Okay.
And it wasn't always in the same place.
All right.
This changed with the times. It changed with settlement. It changed with the weather. And it changed with whatever particular resources were being traded at the time.
Sure.
So to me, I envision an interstate that is kind of slowly shifted east based on the archaeological data. But it had all sorts of corridors and feeders that came into it. So I think we can be inclusive of a lot of communities. I think there's evidence out there that supports the inclusion of many Eastern Kentucky counties.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much for your input, Max. Other thoughts? I will say, looking at the chat box real quickly here, I appreciate folks putting in their input and the interest that they have, as well as potential assistance they can provide. That's all very important in helping us move this forward.
This is John Grace again.
Yes, John?
One of the things that I suggest that we need is for the people that are actively working on the project on maybe like a day-to-day basis, if we had like a shared email list that we could communicate our thoughts through, I think that would really be helpful to us. Does anyone else think that would be a good idea?
Absolutely. That's really the structure that we intend to use, that the areas of interest that you have is identifying those areas, then we will combine those lists and email contacts so folks can start doing an interchange of ideas under specific interest that they have. So, and it doesn't mean that you're locked into just one item. If you're interested in trail corridor planning as well as cultural assets, it's your choice, and that's fine. You're not necessarily going to be assigned to just one task group. Wherever your interest is and what you have to share is important.
Russ,
we will
I have,
ultimately be creating a place to share information as well. Sorry, go ahead.
Russ, this is Bates.
Hey, Eric.
Yes, I have one other thought about the trails business. From my perspective, the meteor strike that created the Cumberland Gap basically opened a hole into the Cumberland Mountains, the Appalachians. And so it's very old, 300 million years old. And so large animals, dinosaurs, buffalo, all kinds of trails used it as a migratory path north. And largely they followed river trails, as Daniel Boone found, following the lowest grade. Like if you have a cow, they don't go directly down the hill or up the hill, they go from side to side, following the least possible path. But they were certainly near water and they were near food. So Max, your comment about shifting around due to survival of the animals and then ultimately Native Americans is very much part of that. So on that basis, if you start at the Kentucky River and look at the Middle Fork, the South Fork, and the North Fork of the Kentucky River, beginning out of Betaville and going into Clay County, but also going into Owsley, as well as going up to Hazard to Whitesburg on the North Fork, and then the main creeks, whether it be the Troublesome or the Goose Creek or whatever, were basically drained those water sources. And so the paths were along those, it's likely. At least that's been our experience of looking closely at the Boone Trace corridor. What we found is that there is a waterway, and then there's a trail, and then following that there's a railroad, because the railroads followed the gradient of the ground, and the buffalo were very good at following those gradients, doing the least effort. So that's what I've got to add to it.
Great. Thank you very much, Ira. Very good. Any other folks? Comments?
Russ, this is John one more time.
Go ahead, John.
Just quickly, I appreciate you plugging the Boone Trace and our master plan. But if anybody were interested just to look at the master plan, which you all apparently, hopefully will come up with yourselves, can be accessed very easily on the computer. Just Google Boone Trace Master Plan 2018. and it'll pop right up. We dedicated a domain just to that, so that you don't have to go through any website or any search. Just Google Boone Trace Master Plan. It should be there.
Great. Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Other thoughts? Again, I really appreciate your input. I appreciate your willingness to sign up for different task groups and identifying how your organization can possibly help with the application process with either resources or talent or skills. So that's all very important. I know that Judy will be reaching out to those folks to help with a letter of commitment, and I will provide a form for that and the address that it needs to go to, and an example from other projects, so that you don't have to start from scratch. And it's our intent also to help with this application from the standpoint is we will review the drafts as they come forth for the application itself to offer input before it is finalized. But I'm looking forward to the future where we can work in groups and get focused on some of these details to help pull this big picture together and look at all the options that this vision has to offer. So are there any other comments or thoughts this evening that you'd like to bring forth?
I know everybody's ready to go, but my question is, at what point can we start thinking about how much money we need to raise and from where to really do this well? I mean, I think there's a lot of this groundwork that has to be done, but it seems like it's such a long-term effort to raise money that by the time we're ready for it, if we've been talking to people and potential investors or funders, it won't be like we're just showing up at their door at the last minute. Maybe we could begin to do that all along the way.
Well, that's a good point. Basically, you kind of have to have that vision locked into some type of description or graphic or combination thereof in order to seek the funding from different sources. And so we need to kind of get this vision nailed down a little bit, but it doesn't have to be 100% polished and years down the road before we get there. And this project will be implemented in pieces, and possible pieces county by county and community by community. It is not something that's going to have one big fell swoop and be implemented. It's a huge undertaking, but when you start breaking it down, like Boone Trace did, they identified, okay, we need this amount of money for signage along the highways. And they went through a process to figure out, working with the State Department of Transportation, on how they could go about that, what rules and regulations had to be met, what that cost would be, and ultimately they were able to achieve that piece of the vision. So it will be many pieces coming together to help finance this project.
Thank you, Russ.
Sure, but it's a great thought. You have to be thinking about how we're going to implement from the very beginning, and keep looking for the low-hanging fruit that can be done cheaply and quickly now to help implement this process. And we'll see those opportunities as we start getting into the planning process.
Russell, I want to thank you for your help in this project and putting these meetings together. Those that signed up to help with the application, I will be contacting you in the next few days because there is a webinar on this application coming up next week with that information. And I'll also send you a copy of the blank application so you can be looking at it, and then we'll schedule a meeting to start breaking down who's going to do what on the application. And as far as other communities or other committees, I think once we take the notes from this meeting and try to see who's interested in what, then we really need to start forming those committees and let each committee decide how and when to meet to put their piece of the puzzle together. And Russell, are we thinking meeting again next month to?
That's up to you folks if you'd like to. I'm fine with doing it in another month. And it could be an opportunity if we, or kind of a report back if you'd like, if we can first of next week get out the shared information of who is interested in what committee and share their emails with each other so that they can start discussions. It would be an opportunity for them to feed back to the larger groups what some of their thoughts might be from initial efforts here. And I'm more than happy to do that, and would like to be able to cut people loose to be able to move forward with what their thoughts are and how to move these pieces into a overall plan. And but it's up to you folks. I'm willing to do it if you think there's a value in doing so. So if you would like, again, just identify, if we want to meet in a month, let us know. Happy to do it. And either put it in the chat or shoot us an email. But I really would hope that the folks that are interested in, let's just use the word trail planning for the corridor, would like, if they'd like to get together as a little subcommittee and start looking at some different ideas and reporting back in a month, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I think it would be good just to keep things moving, and I think there's a lot of work to be done, and just forming these committees will be key, and then the committees can go ahead and start working on their portion, whether it be the, maybe they have a great logo design they want to present, or maybe it's somebody that has web knowledge that wants to create a website. It looks like there's one out there now called warriorspath.org that we can all go look at. So yeah, I think it'd be important that we meet again next month and just kind of let everybody know where we're at on the application, and let everybody know who's on what committee, and then try to figure out if there's somebody willing to chair those committees to call meetings and get the work done on this project. So
Okay. All right, then let's plan on it. Let's schedule for February 11th, if you don't mind. That kind of keeps it in the same time frame of the month that we are now, on a Thursday evening. And so my recommendation is we schedule the next meeting February 11th, 6:30 Eastern time.
sounds great.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating, and we look forward to seeing you again next month. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you.